Well, good morning. It's Gary Sly and the Legacy of Handmade Objects. It's Monday, July the 1st. We're beginning a new week, new month. Here in Florida, we've got Hurricane Beryl moving around out in the ocean there, and hoping it won't come our way. Hope everybody is getting ready for an exciting 4th of July as we near the anniversary of the nation where we marked the 250th anniversary, which is coming up in a couple years. I'm always very aware of that because I graduated in 1976 from high school, which was the 200th anniversary, of course, which tells you my age. I just turned 66 back in May. Well, today I want to turn the clock back a little bit and look at an old traditional kind of style stitching. Don't see much of it anymore, but it's a lot of fun, and it's something that somebody could pick up with very few supplies. It'd be a great kind of beginner's craft to work on with children or young people. It allows for a good bit of flexibility, and that's chicken scratch embroidery. Chicken scratch, of course, means that it's just sort of an everyday kind of style. Chicken scratch would implicate farm life and the country and that sort of thing. So I'll talk a little bit about kind of the history of embroidery, just a quick overview of that, and say something about where chicken scratch embroidery comes in. I'll show you some examples of what I have here. I've done this class once or twice here in the shop, and it's always fun for people to kind of take a step back in time. Many of us might have seen items like this made by our grandmothers or even before them. Some of what I know about embroidery, I'm sure, is old news to those of you who are experts in the field, but just to kind of give a little background, embroidery, or the embellishment of fabric by using threads, goes back as far as we know, at least 30,000 BCE, or that is 32,000 or so years ago. There are evidence of embroidery being done to embellish clothing, boots, hats, all kinds of things like that. Now, of course, any fragments that might be that old are just that, fragments with very little information about what they were actually used for. Specifically, there's some really cool examples of embroidered work from Siberia, which is, of course, now a part of Russia, that dates back about 8,000 years. There's some lovely silk embroidery that we have examples of from China that goes back over 3,500 years. Embroidery began to be used in a religious context in the West as part of Christianity in about the year 1100. So that goes back quite a while, over 1,000 years. And you know, one of the things that fascinates me about embroidery is that it is worldwide. You can find it in every culture. Sometimes men do it, sometimes women do it. Probably predominantly over the world, it's more of a woman's kind of handiwork, but not exclusively that. And there's no reason why anybody would need to be excluded. And a lot of time when you're looking at the culture of an area, one of the fascinating things to take a look at is embroidery itself. Of course, today we know of some of the most popular categories of embroidery: needlepoint and crewel. Needlepoint being done on canvas, crewel being more of a free-form kind of an opportunity to fill up space using a variety of stitches. Thread embroidery using cottons and silks. Thread painting, which is a little more subtle use of color and threads. And of course, counted cross stitch, which is, I suspect, the most popular of these just because of its versatility and use all over the world. When I was in India, I saw Zardozi embroidery, which made a lot of use of gold threads and other specific techniques that we don't see quite as much of here in the West. Well, as I said, chicken scratch is a kind of a part of that history. It goes back, as far as we can tell, to the early 1800s here in the United States. I don't, at this point, see any evidence of it anywhere else. but you had a lot of folks stretching out across the nation in the early part of the 1800s as this continent was being explored. And of course, people needed textiles, people needed clothing and things like that, but also there's always that kind of human desire to decorate and to make it look different. So what basic chicken scratch consists of is the use of gingham fabric. And if you don't know what gingham is, it's any fabric that has these alternating dark and light checks. It can be in cotton or other fibers, but basically it's a very simple weave. And even as far back as the early 1800s, it was pretty easy to get cheap gingham fabric. But what you want to do with chicken scratch is you want to make it look fancy. You want to make it look expensive. And so a variety of X's and outlinings and things like that are what make it look like it's even more complicated needlework than it is. The Great Depression in this country, which began with the fall of Wall Street in 1929 and led up really into the late 30s, was a time when chicken scratch was very popular and very much within the memory of some of the generations that are still around today. Gingham was inexpensive. You didn't necessarily want your environment to look depressing and sad, so you buy cheap gingham fabrics of all different colors, and you can decorate those. You can outline the squares. You can put X's in the middle of them. There's all kinds of wonderful ways to do that. Now, even though I've expressed to you in the past my dislike for hoops and frames, I would argue that chicken scratch is certainly one of those embroidery techniques where you want to use a hoop, because you do want your fabric to be nice and taut as you think about what you want to do. I am sure, because I've had them here in the shop, there are pattern books, and there's certainly patterns online if you want to look at it. But I think chicken scratch is easy enough that most people could probably come up with some ideas and some designs on their own as well. And some of you may have some pieces already that you could use as inspiration. One of the first things I want to show you today is a piece that I very much cherish. It was made for me back when I was beginning my work as a United Methodist minister in Central Virginia near Lynchburg. This piece was made by a friend of mine named Susie Harris. And anybody who grew up in that area of Evington, south of Lynchburg, might know Susie. So this is a circular tablecloth that Susie did for me. It's got this wonderful 8-sided star in the middle that's done in chicken scratch. And then you can see that she hand sewn a piece of lace all around the edges. So let me focus in a little bit on the design and just kind of show you what she's done here. She is only doing X's in her chicken scratch, but you can see at each of the corners of the various styles of gingham, she has done some cross stitch. She's done the white ones to outline the entire star, and then she's used the dark green ones to fill in and create a design, or to fill in the area that she wants to embellish. I don't suspect that Susie had a pattern other than maybe a quilt pattern, because I know she was a quilter also. So she may have just kind of sat down and looked at it and kind of figured out what she wanted to do with this pattern. Chicken scratch is quite nice with geometric designs. It's not as freeform as some things. Let me just kind of stand up and show you what the whole thing looks like here in its finished glory. And I cherish this. I'm sure it was a fairly inexpensive piece of gingham that she picked up somewhere at a fabric shop, but you can see her individual stitches in it, and the love and respect that she shared with me is very evident in this. And what an elegant thing to give to someone. You could certainly do colors that might accent someone's home. and maybe there are designs, maybe there are geometric designs that might appeal to certain folks. Circles, squares, you know, many of the emblems and designs that are around us in the world today are made up of geometric patterns. So that's one example. As I mentioned, I've taught a couple classes in Chicken Scratch, and what you try to do in those classes, aside from teaching the basic techniques, is give some ideas on how people might use the technique. One of the classes that I did was to do a breadcloth cover. And all I did was buy this blue gingham and hemmed it all the way around. And then I made up a design myself that I thought would be kind of fun. Now, if you notice this one, I've done more than just the X's like Susie did in hers. The little strands that are coming down from the bottom are X's, but you can see they're hanging from backstitch. Another interesting thing to do with Chicken Scratch is to outline the white areas. It almost makes it look like those areas have been embroidered inside because it highlights and embellishes the light pieces. And then you can see I've done some variations on the stars to connect my squares, just using some other geometric designs. All I'm really doing is just following the lines of the fabric. I'm not making much of anything up. But that was a very simple piece. You know, bought a couple yards of gingham. You could do napkins, placemats, and bread covers to match. Get whatever color gingham you're interested in, whatever would work well in your decor or whoever it is you're buying it for, and look for some fun designs. Of course, online you can find some good ideas too, but anywhere that you see a geometric pattern, triangles, anything that lends itself well to straight lines, I think would be a good idea for Chicken Scratch. Another thing I did for a class was I designed a little Christmas idea, a Christmas tree. Again, you can see the white areas in this case have kind of well, it's not exactly a square, but it's a little bit rounded. And then the little ornaments are done in green Smyrna crosses, which are just crosses with more than 4 edges. They're crosses with 4 arms, 8 arms instead of 4. This could be put on a piece of foam core and cut out in the shape of the Christmas tree. For me, I wanted this as a set of coasters, so I just put it on foam core and I glued some cork board behind it to create a set of coasters. Vary it with the different colors for the seasons. You could do, I think the ideas of what you could end up doing with Chicken Scratch are quite endless. The reason I like it, the focus of my attention for much of this series is the legacy of handmade objects, of picking up things that maybe don't seem to have a great deal of worth, but because of the significance or the provenance that they bring from the past, really do imbue them with a certain kind of value. My guess is that a lot of us in our households, stuffed away in drawers, have napkins, tablecloths, table runners that will reflect some Chicken Scratch work. A lot of time, whether a person was wealthy or not, it was a good beginning way to begin to learn some of the stitches and think a little bit about how to embellish things. So go and look and see what you have that might be Chicken Scratch. I'd love to see some examples of some of the stuff that you have. If you get a chance to respond to this message, send some pictures and I'll do a little bit of a review at some point and show some of the pictures of some of the items that people have. And it will also serve to give people some ideas and some inspiration if they want to do some Chicken Scratch designs of their own. So, I want to encourage you to look at this if it's something that you're interested in. Some of the stitchers that come in here to the shop, and I'm sure this is true of many out there in the viewing world as well, don't like really strict instructions. they like to kind of play around with ideas and make them their own. Particularly a lot of young stitchers I run into want to embroider in a more free-form fashion, and they want to choose their own colors. Chicken scratch really does give you some opportunities, and it takes a very inexpensive piece of fabric and makes it look like it's a little more valuable. Now, you know, the monetary value doesn't matter anyway. What I can do when I look at this tablecloth that Susie Harris made is I can imagine she and her sister were very prominent members of the community where I lived. Not wealthy, but very prominent. Everybody knew Susie, everybody knew Sally. And, you know, her DNA, her presence, her significance as a human being is also in this piece. It was something that she did for me because she wanted to show me her respect and love. And there's so many items like this. Even if you have just a few scraps of something that has been chicken scratched, you could either copy that pattern and do something new, or you could use that as part of something else, some larger piece of artwork or a structure that might be helpful. If you have old pieces that are handmade, don't just throw them away. See if there's some way you can repurpose them. And maybe I'll do an episode or two where I talk about some of the items that we're likely to find in our homes that could be repurposed. I have one friend, for instance, who takes old hand-embroidered handkerchiefs, excuse me. She fills them with lavender buds so that they have a wonderful smell. And even if they're a little tattered and worn around the edges, she folds over that section, sews them up anyway, and they're lovely for people to put in their dresser drawers to help bring fragrance to what they have. It's just a nice way to continue the memory of that hand stitching along the way. So as you are making your way through the summer and maybe thinking about some ideas for the fall and the holidays, look through what you have. See what kind of objects that you might be able to use or you might be able to recreate as you think about passing on the legacy that's been given to you to those who may follow. It's a pleasure seeing you today. If you're not already a subscriber, I hope you'll hit. You know, I don't do this just for that purpose, but it does help us in the YouTube world to have subscribers. And it's nice to know that people are out there thinking and watching and coming up with ideas of their own with respect to the legacy of handmade objects. So have a great July. For those of you in the U.S., celebrate 4th of July with a great deal of vigor. And I'll see you again later in the month. I'm going to be on a road trip, so I may be on location a bit the next couple weeks. But either way, I'll see you. Take care. Bye-bye.